Welcome, everyone. Today's live session is called Overcoming Inertia and Living with Purpose. We're going to be diving into one of the most practical teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, which is chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. If you've ever felt stuck between, what you should do and what you actually do, or, caught in that loop of overthinking and underacting, then this session is for you. So I'm really excited to welcome Abhimanyu Prabhu. So I will welcome him to the stage.
Thank you so much, Ambika, for your wonderful introduction. I'm very grateful and privileged to be here. And today is also a very special day. It is Gita Jayanti. It is the anniversary of the day in which Bhagavad Gita was actually spoken some 5,000 odd years ago. So I feel very privileged that I get to share in this way, and that I get to share some of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, both for my own upliftment as well as for everyone else.
Agreed. If there's any day to be listening to the Bhagavad Gita, it's definitely today.
Yes.
So without further ado, I will give you the stage.
All right. And so, as usual, I will offer some prayers to invoke auspiciousness for our recitation and hearing of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And since today is Gita Jayanti, the anniversary of the day the Gita was spoken, I will also speak a little bit and share a little bit about some of the glories of the Bhagavad Gita itself. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitanscha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. All right, and so now I will recite and also explain a little bit about what's known as the Bhagavad Gita Mahatmya. Actually, it was written by Adi Shankaracharya. He was a teacher of the impersonalist school, and we understand him to be a manifestation of Lord Shiva. What was it, Mayavadama Satchach Shastram, that Lord Krishna had instructed Lord Shiva to spread Mayavad philosophy to bewilder people who were really inimical to the path of devotion, and also to sort of bring people who had gone into very atheistic forms of philosophy to sort of attract them back to the Vedic culture. And so Adi Shankaracharya, he has written the Bhagavad Gita Mahatmya. The first, it's 7 verses of him glorifying the Bhagavad Gita. The first one goes, Gita Shastramidam Punyam Yapatet Prayata Puman Vishnu Padam Avapnoti Bhaya Shokadi Varjita. One who, with a regulated mind, recites with devotion the Bhagavad Gita scripture, which is the bestower of all virtue, will attain to a holy abode such as Vaikuntha, the residence of Lord Vishnu, which is always free from the mundane qualities based on fear and lamentation. And so again, it sounds like just one simple verse, a simple sentence or two, but there's really so much meaning packed within this verse, even in relation to the topic today, overcoming inertia, living with purpose, living on purpose rather than on accident, so to speak. And so even though when it says it will attain to a holy abode such as Vaikuntha, and we can think of a word like Vaikuntha as, okay, like the spiritual world, almost comparable to the maybe Judeo-Christian idea of heaven, that after we die, we will go to some other planet, some other realm, and once we go there, we'll be free of all suffering, free of all anxiety. And according to the Bhagavad Gita, as we'll come to in later chapters, there is actually such a location, such a spiritual realm where there are no material miseries. That said, the word Vaikuntha, as described in that verse, literally means without kunta, or without distress, without anxiety. It can also be seen as a truly purified state of mind where one is actually at peace with this world, when one is fully aligned with the will of the divine. And so what the author is saying is that by regular recitation of the Bhagavad Gita, by reciting again with a regulated mind, with a peaceful mind, then we actually come the you could say the result that we're meant to experience by regularly studying Srimad Bhagavad Gita is that we're meant to become free of anxieties. And that freedom from anxiety means that we're no longer fearing the future. Oh, well, is this going to go my way? Am I going to get this degree? Is this person going to respond the way I want to? By actually cultivating the spiritual knowledge, we're meant to become relieved of these burdensome fears about the future, and also free of lamentation. What was it? Brahmabhuta prasannatma nashochati na kanchati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. That by studying the Bhagavad Gita, we are meant to become free from all of our hankering, lamenting, our fearing. And that lamentation is particularly for the past. Oh no, this thing didn't go my way. I was supposed to, I was supposed to get the respect I deserved. And I know definitely in working with my clients in my profession, oftentimes people carry regrets from the past, from events they didn't get to partake in, even though I didn't get to go to that dance when I was a teenager or something like that. And so again, it can be, we may say quote unquote big things, small things, but it's not what's happening externally that's big or small. It's my attachment to them, or my lack of attachment thereof, that may be big or small, and that may cause very intense lamentation. So again, some 5,000 odd years ago, this Bhagavad Gita was so wonderfully spoken, and it's echoing throughout history today, so that nowadays in December 1st, 2025, we still get to recite the same Bhagavad Gita verses that were recited then, and the same potency is still there. That in terms of spiritual substance, there's no different. I believe it's in the 18th chapter, verse 54 of the Bhagavad Gita. The commentator Srila Prabhupada explains that in the spiritual world, there's no difference between the reference, and the referent. So the name of a substance and the substance itself in the spiritual world are one. Whereas in the material world, I can say water all I want, but instead of my thirst being quenched, I'll become thirstier because my mouth will dry out. And so in the second Gita Mahatmya verse, Gita dhyayana shilasya pranayama parasya cha naiva shanti hipapani purva janma kritani cha. If one reads Bhagavad Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness, then by the grace of the Lord, the reactions of his past misdeeds will not act upon him. And so we know that Krishna at the very the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, he says sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yashyami ma shucha. That by full surrender, by letting go of this sense of control we have of, okay, well, I have to get this exact result, everything has to go my way, by surrendering that, by surrendering our sense of how we think we're supposed to control the outcome of our life, and actually taking shelter of the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, then all of our past history, the different shames, the different regrets that we're holding on to, they no longer become sources of suffering. We actually come to acceptance of our past as it is and of our present as it is. Verse 3, Maline motanam pungsam jalasnanam dine dine sakrid gitam ritasnanam samsara malanashanam. One may cleanse himself daily by taking a bath in water, but if one takes a bath even once in the sacred Ganges water of Bhagavad Gita, for him the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. And it is interesting, sometimes the Shastra will say, oh, if one even once, like it's saying, if one even once takes bath in the sacred Ganges of Bhagavad Gita, from the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. And so sometimes, we might say, oh, well, I've read Bhagavad Gita before, but my material life doesn't seem to be vanquished. I'm still really frustrated with, I still find myself hankering and lamenting. And so I've always understood it to mean that it depends on, again, how deeply we surrender to the teachings of Krishna, how deeply we, again, surrender means I'm letting my hands go. I'm not holding on thinking that I can control the outcome of this world. Sort of like the the wife of Arjuna, Draupadi, at one point she let her hands go, that she was being disrobed in the royal assembly of the Kurus by, unfortunately, one of her brother-in-laws, Dushashan. And when she saw that nobody in the court was able or willing to help her, she threw her arms up in the air, and recognizing that, yes, this situation is not in my power. And so she surrendered to divine will, to divine mercy. And so, it said that the Lord, he incarnated as a sari, as a cloth, so to speak, to make sure that her purity, her chastity was protected. And so I've understood this. I've always understood this to mean that, yes, it's not just hearing or making an academic study of the Bhagavad Gita, but truly hearing means to actually listen, to follow. If I'm sort of hearing but I don't apply what's taught, then the Bhagavad Gita won't help me if I'm not willing to truly take it to heart. And then text 4. Gita su Gita kartavya kimanyai shastra vistarai yasvayam padmanabhasya mukha padma vinisrita. Because Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one need not read any other Vedic literature. One need only attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad Gita. In the present age, people are so absorbed in mundane activities that it is not possible for them to read all the Vedic literatures. But this is not necessary. This one book, Bhagavad Gita, will suffice, because it is the essence of all Vedic literature, and especially because it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so, sometimes in the Bhagavad Gita, we hear mention of a sage named Vyasa, or Vyasadeva, one who divided the original Vedic knowledge into so many branches. And the original canon of Vedic scriptures deals with such a variety of topics and deals with such a variety of even spiritual paths, spiritual focuses. Bhagavad Gita, it really gives more the essence of it: karma yoga, jnana yoga, buddhi yoga, culminating in bhakti-yoga, devotion to the divine, devotion to the Supreme Sri Krishna. The Vedas, in one hand, they go so into such greater detail, and yet it becomes such an overwhelming amount of detail that people could read those original Vedic scriptures and miss the essence of it. And so what the author is saying, that yes, Bhagavad Gita, it is the essence of all Vedic scriptures. You don't need to read every single branch of the Vedas. I think even earlier in the second chapter, Krishna told Arjuna, don't be bewildered by the flowery words of the Vedas. Stay fixed on your one point of devotion, on your one point of determination in devotional service, in performing your prescribed duty, which is also the idea of a prescribed duty, the idea of one's adhikar, one's inborn qualification. It's very central today to today's topic of overcoming inertia, of living with purpose. So the Bhagavad Gita, it's all about helping us to get in touch with what our true nature is and how we can dovetail that nature in touch with the divine. And so then verse 5, Bharatamrita sarvasvam vishnu vaktrad vinisritam gita gangodakam pitva punarjanma navidyate. By drinking the Ganges water of the Gita, the divine quintessence of the Mahabharata emanating from the holy lotus mouth of Lord Vishnu, one will never take rebirth in the material world again. In other words, by devotionally reciting the Gita, the cycle of birth and death is terminated. In verse 6, Sarvopanishado gavo dogdhago palanandana partha vatsa sudhir bhokta dugdham gitam ritam mahat. All the Upanishads are like a cow, and the milker of the cow is Lord Sri Krishna, the son of Nanda. Arjuna is the calf, the beautiful nectar of the Gita is the milk, and the fortunate devotees of fine theistic intellect are the drinkers and enjoyers of that milk. This is a very beautiful analogy given about how what the Bhagavad Gita is, that all the Upanishads, the Upanishads are considered the spiritual essence of the Vedic scriptures. And so Sri Krishna, the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, said that he's come to milk that cow. And Arjuna is the calf, that for a cow, normally in order for a cow to drink milk, there has to be a calf present, and then that brings forth the milk from the cow. And so Arjuna, he's that calf that by the presence of Krishna's devotee, it becomes possible to really speak the essence of all the Vedic scriptures, to speak the essence of spiritual life. Near the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that this divine philosophy, it cannot be spoken to people who are envious, who are undisciplined, that it has to be spoken to somebody who's very sincere, very serious, and very devoted to the spiritual path. So Arjuna, he's like the calf that just draws the mercy of Krishna. In our Vedic scriptures and Srimad Bhagavatam, it's explained that a very gentle-hearted, submissive disciple, they attract the mercy and blessings of the bona fide spiritual master. And so that submissive disciple in this case is Arjuna. And just by his submission to Krishna, again, over 5,000 years ago, all of us are benefiting today. Again, this Bhagavad Gita, it is one of the most famous scriptures, even in academic circles. The Bhagavad Gita is very well known. So again, Arjuna's submission at that time, at that critical moment in history, it's still echoing throughout the world today and uplifting the consciousness of countless thousands and even millions of people. And so the beautiful nectar of the Gita is the divine milk. By really carefully considering the message of the Gita, we get to start to enjoy that nectar. I believe in the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, our Srila Prabhupada, he explains that even just theoretically accept that what is being said in the Gita is true. If you're not willing to fully accept it, at least theoretically read it as if it was true and see what you gain from it. At least have that much of an open mind if you're not willing to fully give yourself to it. And then the Adi Shankaracharya ends his glorification of the Bhagavad Gita by saying, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam, Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva, Eko Mantras Tasya Namani Yani, Karma Pyekam Tasya Devasya Seva. There need be only one holy scripture, the divine Gita sung by Lord Sri Krishna. Only one worshipable Lord, Lord Sri Krishna. Only one mantra, his holy names. And only one duty, devotional service unto that supreme worshipable Lord, Sri Krishna. And so it's interesting how it says only one mantra, his holy names, that the Sanskrit word mantra has two verbal roots. There's man, or mind, and triate, to deliver. So a mantra is ultimately a sound vibration that delivers the mind from suffering. And so in one sense, every single verse of this Bhagavad Gita can be considered a mantra. And there are many devotees and spiritualists who make a regular habit of reciting verses of the Gita. Some people will recite a whole chapter per day. There are some rare souls who even, would recite the whole Gita regularly. I know, especially on this day, many practitioners will recite the entirety of the Gita. And even just the names of the divine. Again, the names of the divine are fully spiritual, fully transcendental. And the word transcendental means cannot be calculated materially. Their power, their impact on us cannot be calculated. And so yes, this Bhagavad Gita, every word of it, every verse of it is it's nectar. It's a mantra meant to deliver our mind from all the false egos that we're carrying on to, all the materialistic attachments that we're holding on to. And it's meant to deliver us to our true spiritual identity, that Mamaivam Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that we're parts of Sri Krishna, we're parts of the divine, and our inherent nature is service to the divine. And so with that, we can go ahead to the third chapter, verse 1, the first Gita verse under discussion. Arjuna Uvacha, Jayasi Chit Karmanas. Let me pull it up in my book here. Jayasi Chit Karmanas te Mata Buddhir Janardana, Tat King Karmani Gore Mang, Neo Jayasi Keshava. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you urge me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? And we can read the next verse as well. Vyamishre nivavakyena buddhing mo hayasiva me, tarekang vadanishchitya yena shreyo hamapnuyam. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is most beneficial for me. And so Arjuna, Sri Krishna in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita gives basically a summary study of the entire topic of Bhagavad Gita. Karma yoga is discussed, Jnana yoga is discussed, bhakti-yoga is discussed. The Sankhya yoga, or discriminating matter from spirit, is also discussed. So there are so many topics, so many different spiritual paths, Krishna talks to Arjuna about, raise yourself above the three modes, don't get distracted by the flowery words of the Vedas. And so Arjuna, he becomes bewildered. It's like, okay, wait, so are you telling me to fight? Are you telling me to not fight? You're telling me that the path of buddhi yoga, spiritual life through cultivating knowledge, through intelligence, is higher than karma yoga. So then why are you urging me to fight this war, Krishna? And Arjuna, he says, yeah, your at least seemingly equivocal instructions are bewildering my mind. So please tell me what is most beneficial for me. And so this, as I had mentioned before, gets into the topic of what we sometimes call adhikar in the spiritual path. Adhikar meaning my own individual qualification, my own individual nature. That, initially when Arjuna was approaching the battlefield, he told Krishna, "Oh, please draw my chariot in the middle of the battlefield. I want to see who I'm fighting." Arjuna was a warrior of legendary prowess. His name was respected or feared depending on who was hearing it. And so, he had even fought many of the people on the other side of the army before. He was feeling quite confident, and he had every reason to be. And yet, once Krishna brought him in the middle of the battlefield, Arjuna, he became overwhelmed with grief, seeing his grandfather, his teachers, cousins, nephews, father figures, people who were like children, friends to him. And so he became so bewildered that he thought, no, maybe I should follow the path of the sages, of brahmanas. Maybe I should just be tolerant. Maybe I should practice forgiveness. Maybe I should just go to the forest and cultivate spiritual life. I don't see any good coming from this fight. And so there's the understanding of what is actually my nature, what is best for me. And so sometimes we can, some people call it a spiritual bypass, although you could question the validity of that term, because if I'm bypassing something important, then I'm not being spiritual. I'm acting under the mode. So it's not, the term spiritual bypass may be a little misleading, because it's not a spiritual bypass, it's a material bypass. I'm pretending to be more spiritually elevated than I really am, and by such pretentious behavior, I end up sort of remaining stuck in life. And so when we're kind of lying to ourselves, we eventually find ourselves in inertia. One of my favorite books is The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck, where the author, she grew up in, she grew up in a strict Mormon family, and then she was getting her education in Harvard. So on one hand, she had this strict, Mormon religious background. On the other hand, she was learning basically, from a very atheistic, secular background, and she was trying to please everybody. She was trying to maintain an image of being the perfect academic scholar, as well as the perfect Mormon according to her family's tradition. And at one point, she became so confused. Okay, well, these people are telling me this is the ideal, and these people are telling me this is the ideal. And at one point, she became so internally conflicted that her body actually shut down. I mean, it was inertia to an extreme degree, where she just started developing all kinds of, infectious illnesses and things like that. She could barely get out of bed, and she had to go on a journey there of actually asking, well, yeah, what am I actually here for? And let me not ask what everyone else is expecting of me, but what is my dharma, more or less? What is my own purpose in this world? And so it's, the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about how there are broad categories of varnas and ashrams. The varnas being Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, that there are, in every society, there are maybe a more intellectual class, or a priestly class. In every society, there are kshatriyas, there are warriors, there are politicians. Even lawyers might be considered a type of kshatriya, because usually when you see one of those billboards of lawyers, they've got their sleeves all rolled up. We'll fight for you. We'll make them pay. No one wants to mess with us. So there's some, even in cultures where there's the word for an ashram is not a household term. Still, there's some sort of administrative ruling class, fighting class. Then in every culture there are businessmen, there are farmers, people who try to make their own wealth, who try to make wealth off of the land. And in every society there are you could say laborers, people who function well when they're employed by somebody else. And so these these basically broad divisions of society, of different type of work. They're present in every society, and some people can mistakenly think, okay, well, the path of the intellectuals, that's considered to be at the top of the hierarchy, so I should try to be like them. I should try to get as many degrees as I can, or I should try to, I should move into a monastery. I should become a monk, and I should just, if anybody insults me, I should just try to forgive it, and I don't need to worry about like what work I'm going to do. I'm just going to kind of live a temple life, live an ashram life, live the monastic life, because that's at the top of the rung. And so, oftentimes when we get confused about what we think we should be doing versus what our nature actually calls us to do, we find ourselves in very deep inertia. And practically speaking, that inertia often manifests as depression, as a lack of motivation, as suddenly we find it very difficult to do things that are objectively very easy to do. And the reason is because we just, are having a hard time. Deep down on some level, we know this is maybe just not so important to me. So that is one of the main causes of inertia, when we're not acting in accordance with our inborn purpose. And what Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to remember is that, Arjuna, you are a warrior, you are a fighter, you always have been. That has never changed. This is your nature. And if you try to artificially jump past your nature as a warrior, then ultimately you'll meet with ruination, and eventually, whether this life or the next life, you'll just have to come back to try and fulfill this karma again. You'll still remain unsatisfied. And so Krishna, he makes some heavy statements saying that it's better to perform one's own duty even upon facing destruction, rather than to succeed in somebody else's duty. Because again, if I'm doing some type of work that's not meant for me, then just in my heart, I'm going to remain unsatisfied. I'm going to be wondering, well, yeah, but what if I had actually done what I truly wanted? What if I had actually pursued what really mattered to me? And in practical terms, oftentimes what gets in the way of us pursuing our own nature is that some part of our culture is giving us the message that, they're giving us some message that we've maybe interpreted as, okay, well, I'm supposed to pursue this path in life. And nowadays, a college education is really touted as, yeah, if you want to succeed, you have to get a college education. And in many fields, that is the truth. That said, I definitely work with a lot of people who they're sort of under the impression that I got to go to college, I got to get my degree, but there's no, they have no major in mind. They don't have any line of work in mind. Or sometimes when I even ask them, well, what do you actually want to do? Oftentimes what they really want to do career-wise has nothing to do either with their degree track, or oftentimes doesn't even require college to begin with. But there's just the narrative that you got to go to college, you got to get that degree. And so people then sometimes find themselves like even, needlessly flunking out of college and wondering, oh, why did I fail? And when I really get down to it with them, they realize, well, I failed because it wasn't important to me. And I was just doing it to please my parents. I was doing it to impress my friends, whatever it was. I was not acting in full integrity. I was not truly acting in line with my own purpose, with my own nature. So again, for Arjuna, it was well known to Krishna, yeah, Arjuna, your nature is as a fighter. And so that, if you try to escape your nature, if you try to artificially give up your nature and surpass it, then you're just going to meet with problems down the line. And so just as there are the, broadly speaking, different types of work, there's the intellectual class, the administrative class, the mercantile class, and the laborer class. There are also different stages of life. There's brahmachari life, or student life, grihastha life, or spiritually minded householder life. Then there's vanaprastha life, where one is starting to retire from the duties of this world to pursue spiritual life. And some will take what's known as sannyas, which is that they completely dedicate themselves to monastic life for the rest of their life. And so that's, Krishna, he mentions Chaturvanya Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha, that ultimately what determines which ashram, which phase of life is appropriate for us, what determines which type of work is appropriate for us, it's based on our qualities and the type of activities we do. It's not based on just, well, okay, I'm born in this family, so now I got to take up the family business. That's not what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. that we have to look at what qualities do I have and what type of work am I inclined to. And so I have to be honest with that nature. Again, people around me might be telling me, oh, well, you should get this degree in this job. It pays really well. A lot of people, their parents urging them to become doctors or something like that, but their nature may be something very different. And so that is something ultimately each of us has to be honest with ourselves about. What type of work actually gives me the most enthusiasm, the most sensory and mental strength? Which type of work actually gives me the strength to continue the fight against Maya, the fight against illusion? And so let me actually be rightfully engaged in that work. And, as we see Arjuna doing here, he's having some confusion. Okay, well, maybe I want to fight, maybe I don't want to fight. Now I'm bewildered. So he submits himself to a bona fide spiritual master, who is in this case his dear friend Krishna, somebody who knows his nature very well and who is ultimately not tolerating anything less than his best, less than excellence from him, especially given the crucial nature of the war that was impending at that time. So in summary, Sri Krishna, he's encouraging Arjuna to dedicate yourself to work according to your nature. Don't avoid who you are. Don't avoid what your nature is and the work that comes with it. Oftentimes when we're afraid, oh, well, I don't know if this will go the way I want based on my attachments, we avoid who we are. We avoid what is actually natural for us. And Krishna, he's encouraging us to have the courage to overcome our fears and actually pursue what is truly in our nature. And that ultimately is, part of our path towards Krishna consciousness, towards divine consciousness. By becoming true with ourselves in that way, then again, it's accepting the reality of who we are, at least in the context of this lifetime. And the more we can accept that reality, then we come to peace. We stop the resistance. We stop the argument with the reality as God has created it, and we come in alignment with divine will. So with that, I will pause here. If there are any questions or comments, I will be very glad to take them.
Thank you so much, Abhimanyu. In terms of questions and comments, I did just want to acknowledge Colleen, who is joining us again. She said, Happy Gita and Ekadashi. Thank you for the amazing class. Thank you, Colleen, for joining us. I did have a question that I think crosses my mind quite a bit. And you touched on it a little bit. But in terms of, your experience with the Bhagavad Gita and the teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, for someone who perhaps might be afraid to really live in that integrity of, what they are, what they feel they could be doing rather than what they think they should be doing, what tools can they pull from the Bhagavad Gita to kind of to lean on to really get perhaps courage or whatever might be stopping them there? And that might be a loaded question, but
It is a very good tool. Yeah, a very good question though. Where, how do we gain courage when there's some part of us that knows, okay, this really is what I need to do, but I'm afraid to do it. And I'm trying to think specifically from the Gita. I mean, one thing I know is that when in the 13th chapter, when Krishna describes, true factors of knowledge, and in the 16th chapter, when he describes divine qualities, he talks about, I believe it's arjavam, simplicity or simple-heartedness. This is one of the divine qualities. And simple-heartedness means that my mind, my body, my words, they're all in alignment. I'm not saying one thing and doing another. I'm not praising somebody and internally holding ill feeling from them. I'm fully in alignment. And so that's, one, at least holding that ideal, what would the simple-hearted thing be? And again, it's, ironically, being simple-hearted is not always easy, because sometimes if we're simple-hearted, other people may not approve of us. And then it's like, okay, well, if I was totally honest and then somebody doesn't approve of me, then I'll know that the rejection was real. Whereas if I'm deceptive, if I'm not truly honest and they reject me, well, they reject the real me. Maybe they would accept the real me. So ironically, we sort of settle for the possibility that, we settle for the possibility that, well, maybe the rejection isn't fully real because I wasn't honest in the first place. Of course, there are a slew of negative consequences for such a way of living, but again, everything we do, even the dysfunctional things, we do them because they work on some level.
Mm.
Any dysfunctional behavior we have has its payoff. And so ultimately, though, what Krishna is urging us is strive to be simple hearted. Was
Mm.
it say what you mean, but don't say it mean, but still say what you mean. We have to somehow or other find the kind and humble way to say what's on our mind. And oftentimes people will say, oh, well, if I said what's on my mind, then people would get hurt. And what Krishna urges us in the 17th chapter is, well, the austerities of speech are speak the truth. I'm working the camera here. Speak the truth, but speak the truth in a way that is beneficial and is pleasing. So, and also that's not agitating to others. So, we are responsible for being simple hearted, and yet being simple hearted doesn't mean, well, I'm just going to say whatever random thought comes to my mind. No mind if
Right.
it hurts anyone else. No, himsa. Ahimsa means I'm not trying to cause suffering to any living entity, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm responsible for how I present myself. I mean, I suppose this is more specifically about courage when it comes to speaking our mind, and I think that is oftentimes one of the challenges we face modern day. For any decision broadly, when it comes to, okay, well, what if I want to go down this career track that my parents don't want me to go down? What if a lot of people are encouraging me to stay in this ashram and dedicate my life here, but I want to get married? For some people, it's vice versa. Their parents are saying, "Where are my grandchildren? Where are my grandchildren? When are you going to get married?" But then some people, there are some, maybe fewer, but there are some people who just genuinely they feel inclined towards the monastic celibate life and they truly find their fulfillment there. But a lot of people are expecting them to go get a job, get married, have kids, buy a
Mm.
house, do the whole 9 yards. And so, if you ever, when and I should not say if you ever, at some point in our life, we're almost certain to face some big decision that is in line with our nature, but maybe not in line with what others want for us. And so I guess in terms of gaining that courage, it's recognizing, well, what are the consequences if I betray myself here? Essentially, I may have
Mm.
to ask that, or if I betray those who truly have my best interest in mind.
Mm.
Some of those consequences are that, again, if I sort of sacrifice what's truly in my integrity for the approval of others, then ironically, I will never be able to accept their approval because I didn't approve of myself enough to actually do what I believe, to follow what I believe in. So therefore, even if somebody else praises me, I can never believe it, and I'll always remain suspicious of others.
Mm.
Ironically, one of the biggest things that gets in the way of being able to trust others is how honest and forthcoming we've been with others. If I've held something back, then I have a hard time trusting them
Mm.
because I'm still holding something back. And that gets to ultimately, I'm the creator of my experience. I'm the one who
Mm.
creates, what makes a sense of trust, a sense of mistrust. If I'm holding back, I can be creating a sense of mistrust when really I'm not even giving the other person the chance to accept me. And so I have to recognize that, yes, if I do, honestly, I go for it, whatever that it is. Maybe it's asking the person out that you really want to ask out, or it's telling your parents that you actually want to move in a monastery, or it's pursuing a career they didn't want you to pursue, whatever it is. I have to recognize that, yeah, if I'm rejected, then at least I'll have accepted myself. And then if I'm accepted, then I'll be able to truly accept the acceptance of others. If I've been thoroughly honest, then the rewards are that, hey, now I'll know that they've accepted me for real because I was honest enough to give them the chance to do that.
Mm.
So it's taking a stance of full personal accountability for what my experience of life is, really, that ultimately I'm the only one who has to go to sleep at night with the decision that I make. Somebody
Mm.
else may be pleased or displeased with it, but at the end of the day, it is my life, it is my responsibility. And especially as practitioners of yoga, of bhakti yoga, it's my spiritual life. And so we have to approach it consciously and with full integrity.
Hmm. So many wonderful nuggets in there, I think. And um, I think it really, and it's fitting that it's, Gita Jayanti today, this day when the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. It really, so I don't know why it surprises me, but I feel every year on this day, I sort of, um, rethink or am reintroduced to how just how relevant the Bhagavad Gita is, and just how practical it is, and how much we can grow both materially, spiritually, and really live in integrity with these teachings. So thank you, Abhimanyu, for providing such a well-rounded session today and class for everyone. Colleen also here says thank you. And well, we'll be wrapping it up for today. So if it's your first time joining us here at Ashram Talks, we are here every Monday evening and Thursday morning, depending on where you are in the world. But we are here Monday evenings Eastern time, and Thursday mornings Eastern time as well. We are happy to take questions. We are happy to discuss topics that are relevant for you, that are going to help you live a more fulfilled, satisfied, spiritually enlightened life, and whatever that means to you. So please do keep in touch with us. You can leave us a comment on YouTube, or you can connect with us on Instagram. Our Instagram is Ashram Talks ENG. So you can feel free to connect with us there as well. Thank you so much again to everyone who's joining us. Thank you, Colleen, for joining live. Thank you, Abhimanyu, once again for this wonderful class, and we look forward to seeing everyone again on Thursday. Oh, I will say quickly, on Thursday we do have a very special guest, Srila Bhakti Vichar Vishnu Maharaj, so a monk within this bhakti yoga tradition who has been practicing this bhakti yoga since childhood practically, will be joining us on Thursday for the class. So please do join us. It's you don't want to miss that. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.